views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Leaders of the Future, a program produced by Niño de la Caridad Foundation and BronxNet TV. My name is Leah.
And my name is Jocelyn. LOTF is a youth-led program by young people for young people to inspire, motivate, and educate.
That's right, and my name is Haiti. And in this episode, we are going to discuss social justice. So stay tuned. This is Leaders of the Future.
Welcome to Leaders of the Future. Today we're discussing social justice.
By definition, social justice is justice in terms of distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society.
Let's start by talking about what social justice looks like in the Bronx. So in our community, I see how it's clear that social injustice happens every day, and this could happen in the workforce or anything like that. It usually occurs because of gender, race, or ethnicity. We see it, like I said, in workforces with the different payments, or it can occur things like that. We just see it every day. It's also with healthcare too. The people that are able to qualify and those who aren't able to qualify. It's with so many things. Just like I said, things like gender or race or economy play a huge role in.
Social injustice in the community are things that aren't right and should not be happening, and things that have been going on between people just because of certain topics or things that they don't have in common, and these things have to be stopped.
I agree with both of you. There's a lot of things that have to be discussed and changed for the better. And in our community, there's some things that are very debatable. So hopefully they get fixed and soon we'll have a better community.
How do you think these issues can be addressed?
Issues like these can be addressed because now in the time period we're in, this generation uses social media a lot. So maybe these issues can be addressed there where everyone can see it, or we can do flyers or things like that.
I agree. It could be addressed and it could be changed. We just need we need a lot of people to fight for this change and to make this place okay, let me start that again. I agree with you as well. I believe that these issues can be changed, and we also, as a community, we should fight for these things and change for the better.
I agree. I think that a way that these issues can be addressed is by informing the community and by providing awareness to those around us. Yeah. We're taking a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Leaders of the Future.
Thank you for staying with us here on Leaders of the Future. This episode is about social justice.
Here to speak to us is our first guest, Dr. Fénix Arias, a researcher and an advocate for social justice, inclusion, exclusion, social political dynamics of minority and subcultural groups. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Hi, Dr. Fénix. My name is Haiti, and my first question is, what does social justice mean to you?
Social justice is the view that everyone deserves equal treatment, equal opportunities, or equal social rights. So when we talk about social justice, we are asking that everyone is treated fairly and with the same level of consideration in society.
Thank you. Can you please share more about your work and focus?
Absolutely. So my work focuses on social justice. However, I have been discussing a theory on social bulimia. One might think that is a theory related to the medical field. It's the gross process of inhaling a lot of food and then regurgitating that food or vomiting the food. But I use this theory in a social context to demonstrate or to measure the level of social justice or social inequality in society. It could be in an institution, or it could be in the borough of the Bronx, for instance, where we are. So, for instance, social bulimia is the dual mechanism of inclusion and exclusion. It's when we believe through the inclusion theory that you belong to society, that you have every right to be part of the middle class, to get a good education, to be able to go to a good institution, and eventually get a good job, which means that you have the possibility of changing your to middle class, basically from a lower class to middle class or to a better social class through your own bootstrap and social opportunities. So part of what research does is to bring social awareness on what levels then of society are not providing a social justice or equity. So if I were to look at what is the educational achievement of the Bronx, all of you, I assume, live in the Bronx, right? So if I were to look at the social, the educational achievement of the Bronx, I will like to measure that against this crime rate of the Bronx. And if we show a map, we're going to see that the areas where you can see that there are better quality of educations according to the census and to statistical national data, then you will also see that those are the areas where crime is less prevalent. So if we look at this map, you're actually going to be able to see that where we have a lower level of education, we're going to have a higher level of crime.
What moved you to do this work?
Well, what moved me to do this work, I came to the United States when I was 16 years old without speaking a word of English. And I enrolled at Ostos Community College. And everybody I remember kept telling my father how Ostos Community College at the time was not a good institution. Today it's one of the best of the Bronx. And I actually recommend anyone who's looking to improve their future to attend Ostos Community College because they equip me with the tools, the necessary tools to succeed in the United States. Because yes, I consider myself a success story because when I came in, I did not speak the language. From Ostos Community College, after learning English, I actually transferred to Columbia University with a full scholarship. After that scholarship, I actually began to learn about the so-called American dream and how difficult it is to actually attain it. To give you an example, if I had not attended Ostos Community College, it was going to be very difficult for me to actually learn the language, adapt or assimilate to the American culture, to understand what are the values of entering a formal economy. If I had not learned that at Ostos, I would actually have not been able to graduate from college and actually have a job today that give me the means to own my own home and to be financially to have financially freedom. So all that once I learned what was the formula to success, what I consider the formula, that motivated me to actually research the subject, obtain a PhD on the matter, and now it's my motivation to educate others and bring awareness to others to share what was my path in achieving that success, in accomplishing having a job and reaching that so-called American dream. So that's what motivates me. I want to see the children of tomorrow, my youngsters, doing better than what I did and finding out where those opportunities, the way I did and other mentors did for me. That's what I would like today to voice for all of you.
Thank you for sharing your inspiring story. And you kind of started discussing but what is social exclusion and how does it impact the community?
Social exclusion, the way that I define it in my research, is when legislations and policies are passed and they intentionally or unintentionally socially exclude certain groups of society. To give you an example, if someone has been incarcerated, they do not have the right to vote, certain depending on the crime. So that group by default is socially excluded. Also, teen pregnancy. When a teenager has a child, then it's going to be very difficult if they don't have the support system in place to actually go to school or actually get training for any job to enter a formal economy or the labor market. Basically, this person is going to have a hard time now getting a job and finding a housing, affordable housing, where to live, where to raise this child. So by default, then the system puts roadblocks to socially exclude individuals by not being able to graduate from high school because of the multiple reasons in society or the social exclusion drivers that also represent social exclusion. So it's any roadblock that will prevent an individual from achieving the integration to either the labor market formally or achieving that so-called middle class.
Thank you, doctor. That was really interesting. How has COVID-19 heightened lack of social justice in our communities?
Well, COVID-19 actually woke up a lot of the dormant social drivers, social exclusion drivers, because then it made us realize, and by us I mean society, made us realize the need not only for a formal economy, but also a lot of people lost their jobs. We were, when everybody was mandated to stay home, not every employer continued to pay a salary. So many individuals are now depending upon social services, which is also could become is a catch 22 because that could also become a social exclusion driver because if you get used to receiving this money, you're not going to find those opportunities to actually go ahead and improve your livelihood. So many people also became dependent on unemployment, which by default now excludes individual from the formal economy and the labor market because now they don't have a job. And even though it's supposed to mean some sort of assistance, again, the danger is on how the individual is receiving this assistance. I might now want to stay home and not want to find a job because I used to receive more money from unemployment. Am I going to be, did I get used to being home with my children? How am I going to now incorporate into the labor market if I don't have any formal training? Because if many people lost their jobs, maybe these were jobs that did not require a training, but because they have been working in the same organization or company for so long, they didn't need to change. Now, perhaps they're going to be required to have new set of skills. Another way that we find social exclusion through the pandemic is technology. We realize how important it is not only to have a computer or a laptop at home, but also to be able to afford Wi-Fi, to be able to have Wi-Fi, and how Wi-Fi, instead of being a right, which is the way that the legislation is fighting it today, basically everybody should have Wi-Fi because it's a new form of communication. It's a new form to provide access, not only for you to go to school because everybody was remote, but also to work. And Wi-Fi is very expensive. A family could be spending on Wi-Fi from $100 to $350 because I don't know if you're aware that this come in a bundle, in a package. So that forced actually legislation and many programs to provide free Wi-Fi, either through a hotspot. I don't know if you noticed that the school system, for instance, we began distributing laptops with internet or hotspot. So that basically the pandemic highlighted a technological gap or social exclusion tool in the community. Even in the hospitals, they began to now teleconference with patients. And if you didn't have Wi Fi or a phone that was modern enough to have that teleconference, then we were excluding you from that opportunity. So COVID-19, I believe, deepened and highlighted what are some of the societal needs. access to food, access to housing, and access to technology.
That was a great explanation, but what do you hope your work will accomplish?
Ooh, so many things. But for now, I am happy if my work accomplishes awareness. I want individual to understand what happens when we do not pay attention to what I call also a representation of the social cycle in the United States. If we are not aware of what are the social indicators that can actually pull us behind and not help us or push us to actually achieve middle class or be or reintegrate into a formal economy, then we are at risk of becoming what one of the theories I research a human waste. I know it's a strong theory, but if we do not utilize human capital, which means taking advantage of all of our citizens and residents in the area, then we are running the risk of an increased number of incarceration, increased number of gang activities, rather than increasing the number of graduates and formal economy jobs, people integrating to the labor market, then we're going to see the opposite and become for minority groups and for groups that do not have the exposure to social capital to actually further them down to social exclusion. So I'm hoping to accomplish that awareness. Let's wake up and let's begin to advocate for social inclusion.
How can we stay in touch with you?
By my email address, and also on social media, LinkedIn through Fénix Arias. My name is on the screen, so you can reach out. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. Any question for my youth, I'll be there for you. Let's accomplish social inclusion together.
Thank you for being with us today. This was a really great conversation. We're taking a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more leaders of the future.
Thanks for staying with us on Leaders of the Future. We're now happy to be joined by Gregory Hernandez. Gregory is a filmmaker.
He is the founder of Green Canvas Productions, a video production company based on the Bronx, and he has a new social impact film coming out soon. He will tell us more about this film today. Welcome, Gregory. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn, and my first question is, what does social justice mean to you?
Social justice to me means accessibility for quality of life and accessibility for resources and the pursuit of happiness for everyone, regardless of their cultural or ethnic or national background. It's about having an inclusive and safe environment for those of us in our respective communities.
Can you please share more about your documentary 1.5 million?
Definitely. Yeah, so 1.5 million is a social impact documentary. It's a feature film, so that means it's above 60 minutes. Our film is about just a little over 2 hours long. And really our film is about the literacy crisis in the Bronx. So essentially we're covering all aspects as it pertains to access to books, to print literature here in the Bronx, and how that the access of it in the Bronx compared to when you compare it to other boroughs is not as accessible. So when you look at the amount of bookstores and high functioning libraries and little free libraries, up until very recently, we were far behind the other boroughs. So that's something that we've really explored at length in our documentary, the impact of having books in your home, the impact of having access to books and why that's important and how that'll impact your life in the future. And really you'll have a life that's fruitful and really worth living. And if you don't invest and really become a reader, then your life is going to be much more difficult. So the ramifications of not being literate or not really pursuing literature at a young age will have dire consequences for you.
What made you focus on the literary crisis in the Bronx?
What made me focus on the literary or literacy crisis here in the Bronx is, well, I'm a voracious reader. I didn't find any bookstores in my immediate neighborhood while I was, shooting another movie, making another, short movie, a narrative. We were looking for bookstores in the Bronx and I could not find any. And that had an impact on me because we had to shoot the movie outside of my borough, outside of my neighborhood. So it made it logistically more difficult. So that was something that stuck with me in the back of my mind. Like, wow, no wonder in my early and mid 20s, I didn't really hang out around my neighborhood. I was always going to Manhattan or Brooklyn to really invest in culture, to really learn more and feel like I was in a more of a vibrant, literary or even cultural or stimulating environment. So that was something that definitely stuck with me, like I said. And going forward, that was about 2014. 2 years later, I found out that the Barnes and Noble was leaving. I didn't even know that there was a petition to save it. I didn't even know, the Barnes and Noble really existed outside of that time that I was doing a little bit of research. So the fact that as somebody who had lived in the Bronx my whole life, a lifelong Bronx resident, was not surprised that we didn't have, bookstores, or we only had one bookstore. That right there is a crisis, that we've gotten used to not having the bare necessities. So that was something that led me to want to pursue making the story, really pursue the story, make it into a documentary. And then, of course, Noelle Santos, the following year in 2017, started her amazing venture in terms of kicking off her fundraising campaign and national press campaign. And that was really the time that I saw this. I'm like, this would be a great story worth pursuing. The lack of bookstores being the hook. It was only until later in the process of doing the movie that I started to do even more research and be more aware of what was going on in my, my neighborhood in the Bronx in terms of literary activists and Bronx natives and people getting involved in terms of making the literary system here more accessible, more vibrant, more inclusive, and more robust. So really, it went back to the fact that I'm a voracious reader. I live in the Bronx, and I was used to the fact that there were no bookstores around me. And it was only until that wake-up call of us losing our last one that I was like, we need to get a story about this. Stories matter, and stories are the way to inspire others into action.
Have things improved socially since the making of your film?
Yes, they've improved greatly. We now have, multiple bookstores. We have the Brick and Mortar and the Lit Bar in Port Morris. We have Boogie Down Books, which is a pop-up in Mott Haven. We have, Bronx Bound Books, which is a mobile bookstore that goes around the entire borough. We also now have the New York Public Library, which has brought back the bookmobile program that had been archived for quite some time, I believe for decades. So to have that back, having the Bronx Bound Books where you can purchase books, and the bookmobile which you can sign up at one of the bookmobiles sign up for a library card and check out books. That's amazing because now it's providing greater accessibility to literature. And in 2018, we only had 2 little free libraries in the entire borough, and they were right next to each other in the North Bronx. So it's like we didn't have any. Now we have over 25. So think about that growth from 2018 to now. We need more literature, and we need people developing greater habits of reading, greater reading habits. So things have greatly improved in terms of access to literature. However, it's too soon to say that we've seen a shift in the increase of literacy rates in terms of a trend going upward. We don't know if there's a direct correlation yet. So we have yet to see that. And the reason why we've yet to see that is because of the pandemic. So with all of the data points trending upwards in terms of greater access to literature, I think it's only a matter of time before we start to see those trends in terms of literacy rates dropping and graduation rates increasing and high school graduates and reading at their grade level. I think it's only going to be a matter of time, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
How can we stay in touch with you? Also, please invite our viewers to see your film premiere.
Yeah, so the way you can, yes, you're all invited to the premiere, first of all. That's on Saturday, May 21st at the AMC Cinema at the Bay Plaza Mall located in Co-op City, which unfortunately that's the only current, active movie theater in the entire borough. That's another sad thing. So that's on Saturday, May 21st. And yes, you can keep in touch with us by following us on social media at 1.5 million _documentary. You can email us at 1.5 million bronxdoc@gmail.com. And of course, you can go to our website at 1.5million.com.
What message would you like to leave today's youth in the Bronx with?
The message I want to leave the Bronx youth with is no matter what path you decide, no matter what career or pursuit you want to do, anything in life, you will need to be literate. You will need to be well read, and it's important. Books can transform your lives. Everybody needs a book that can really steer them in the right direction, and you should look for a book that really speaks to you, that really is for you. So as you develop your interests and in terms of your goals, as you get older and progress in your academia as well as in your your professional lives as you get older, you're never going to stop learning. You should never stop reading. You should continue to read more. Reading books, as it's been told in in pop culture and in movies and television, it's like weightlifting for your brain. That's what you need. We all burn calories, and your brain burns calories when you're doing something. If you cannot read at your grade level by a certain age, you're going to fall behind. And unfortunately, when you fall behind, you're setting yourself up for a life that isn't pleasant. So if you want to reach your full potential, you need to continue to read, and that can be anything. From graphic novels to scripts, poems, essays, magazines, newspapers. You need to make it habitual. You need to infuse the habit of literacy, of reading, as really an everyday thing. Whether it's a short story or a novel, it doesn't matter. And having books in your home, that's important. But once again, it comes back to wanting to read. If you want to be a writer, you got to read. If you want to be a scientist or a lawyer, you need to read. You want to be a doctor, you got to read. So the earlier you do it and the more consistent you are with it, it's going to help you. So if you want to be a strong, independent person, you got to be reading. You got to be lifting those mental weights. And I hope that the youth limits the screen time and increases the read time.
Thank you, Gregory, for the encouragement, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
That's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning in.
To learn more about Niño de la Caridad Foundation, visit us online at niñodelacaridad.com.
Also, follow us at Niño de la Caridad Foundation on social media. We look forward to seeing you next time here on Leaders of the Future.